100 races, 100 starts, and not a single win. Let that number settle for a moment, because this is not just any driver we are talking about. This is Kyle Busch, two-time NASCAR Cup Series champion, the man who won at every track, in every situation, under every kind of pressure the sport could throw at him. The man who spent 19 straight seasons putting his car in victory lane. And right now, in 2026, that man is sitting 24th in the standings, with 0 top 10 finishes through 7 races. Driving a car he has openly called broken. Something is very wrong, and the question the entire NASCAR world is quietly asking is whether this thing can actually be fixed, or whether we are watching the final chapter of one of the greatest careers this sport has ever seen. If you follow NASCAR and you want real breakdowns, real facts, and real opinions on the stories that actually matter, subscribe right now. We are building a community of fans who go deeper than the highlights. Hit that button and let's get into this together. To understand how serious this situation is, you need to go back to 2023. Kyle Busch had just left Joe Gibbs Racing, the team he built his entire legacy with, after a contract dispute. He landed at Richard Childress Racing, and in the beginning, it actually looked like a smart move. He won at Fontana, he won at Talladega, he won at Gateway. 3 wins in his debut season at RCR. For a moment, it looked like Rowdy had landed on his feet, then everything stalled. His last Cup Series victory was June 4, 2023, at Worldwide Technology Raceway in Gateway. That was it. That was the last time Kyle Busch stood in victory lane, and since that afternoon he has started 100 consecutive Cup Series races without winning a single one. 100. That is the longest winless streak of his entire career. For context, there were stretches earlier in his career where Busch went 5 or 6 races without winning, and people considered it a slump. 100 races is not a slump. 100 races is a crisis. So what is actually happening here? Because the easy answer is to just say Kyle Busch is getting old, he is 40 years old, the speed is gone, move on. But that is not the full story, and if you accept that simple answer, you are missing everything that is actually broken inside this situation. Let's start with the car. Kyle Busch himself has been remarkably honest about it. On SiriusXM NASCAR Radio, he explained how RCR came into the next-gen era with a genuine advantage. They understood how the new car responded to adjustments before most other teams did. That early knowledge is what allowed Busch to win 3 races in 2023. But here is what happened next. The rest of the field caught up. And while other organizations invested, developed, and evolved their programs, RCR fell behind. The gap that gave them an edge in year 1 of the next-gen car quietly disappeared, and they've been scrambling to find it ever since. At Las Vegas this season, Busch qualified 34th. Then during the race, his car faded so badly he went multiple laps down. He called the car broken on the team radio, and he was not being dramatic, he was being accurate. At Martinsville, the same story. A 21st place finish, extending the winless streak to 100 races exactly, and his pit crew cost him additional ground when they lost tire control during pit exit. That is a penalty on top of an already terrible day. Now here is where it gets interesting. Denny Hamlin, someone who raced alongside Busch for years at Joe Gibbs Racing and knows exactly what elite looks like, went on his Actions Detrimental podcast and refused to put all the blame on RCR. Hamlin pointed out that Austin Dillon, Busch's own teammate, was finishing 16th while Busch was finishing last. Same equipment. Hamlin said directly, if Kyle is great like we all believe he is, then he should be 8th. That is a significant thing to say. Because what Hamlin is suggesting, without fully saying it, is that something beyond just the car is going wrong for Busch right now. Kevin Harvick went even further. Harvick said on his show that he is worried about how this whole thing ends between Busch and RCR. He described Busch as one of the sport's greatest drivers ever to sit behind a wheel, and then said that the Gen 7 car in the current RCR setup may simply be an environment where Busch cannot overcome the equipment gap regardless of talent. That is a devastating thing to hear about a 2-time champion. And then there is the crew chief situation. Randall Burnett, the man who had been working with Busch at RCR, announced he is leaving for Trackhouse Racing at the end of this season to support Connor Zilisch. Andy Street has stepped in as interim crew chief. Mid-season crew chief instability is one of the most damaging things that can happen to a struggling program. The communication, the trust, the shared understanding of what the car needs on a given weekend, that all takes time to build, and RCR is rebuilding it in the middle of a season where they can afford 0 more mistakes. Mark Martin, one of the most respected voices in NASCAR history, said it plainly in January. He looked at RCR's on-track performance and said it is simply not where it needs to be. Not the driver, the organization. And when a legend like Mark Martin calls out an organization publicly, people in the garage listen. Here is the reality that nobody wants to say out loud, but everyone is thinking. This is a contract year for Kyle Busch at RCR. His deal runs through the end of 2026. With 100 races without a win, sitting 24th in the standings, with no top 10 finishes through 7 races, and a crew chief transition happening mid-season, what does the second half of this year look like for him? And more importantly, what does 2027 look like? There are 3 paths in front of Busch right now. He stays at RCR, hopes the car finds speed, and tries to end the streak before the season closes. He moves to a different organization for one last competitive run somewhere that has the equipment to put him in victory lane. Or he walks away entirely, with his legacy secured by 2 championships, 61 Cup Series wins, and a career that nobody in this sport can take away from him. None of those options are clean. None of them are easy. But the window for the first option is closing fast. NASCAR insider David Stile was blunt about it, saying the car issues at RCR are simply too deep for Busch to overcome at this point in his career. That is a harsh verdict. But when you look at the results, 21st in standings in 2025, his lowest finish in nearly 2 decades, and now 24th through 7 races in 2026, it is hard to argue with the numbers. That is the real weight of this story. It is not just about a winless streak. It is about whether one of the greatest drivers in NASCAR history gets one more moment to remind everyone what he is capable of, or whether the sport moves on before that moment arrives. So I want to hear from you directly. Do you believe Kyle Busch wins again in 2026? Is this an RCR problem, a driver problem, or both? And if you were in his position right now, with a contract ending, a 100-race drought, and the clock ticking, what would you do? Drop your answer in the comments. This is exactly the kind of debate this sport needs right now. If this breakdown gave you something real, hit the like button, leave a comment, and subscribe. Every week, we are going deeper on the stories that matter in NASCAR. And what is coming out of Kansas Speedway this weekend could add another chapter to this story. Do not miss it.